get this party started. All right. So I had an intro screen set up and I can't find it. So I guess you're just gonna have to look at me while you guys come into the stream. But just so you know, we've got a live stream coming. There's a number of topics weighing heavy on my heart here, and I may or may not say some things that, well, hopefully nobody else is saying. So stay tuned for that. In just a moment, let people roll in. I suppose Anthony is using his phone, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to share this thing out. Or hopefully all of the algorithms are working and it's getting shared out on its own. Let's see what happens. So if you have joined us, hop on in. And I wish I could have came up with a more provocative title. Maybe that's what's going on. Who knows? All right, screw it. Let's bring Anthony in. So, hey, what's up, buddy?
What's up, man? So I get a message from you as I'm at work, and you're asking me if I was available to go to live, or not live, but to do a video. And I pretty much had a feeling I knew what it was about. And obviously, the school shooting down in Texas has been all over the news, and so yeah, and if that's the case, I'm going to be honest with you. My knowledge of this whole situation is very minimal. But it almost seems like you don't have to have a whole lot of knowledge on this situation that's currently going on. But now
Well,
you came to me and said that you had a lot that you wanted to say that maybe others aren't. So
before we do get started, I do need to address a small issue that there is between you and I. You and I have an issue. I
yeah, I
hope
mean, if you're going to give me, monkeypox, at least have the decency once you leave the doctor's office to call me and let me know.
well, that's
I
just it.
mean, that would be
I didn't
appropriate.
didn't have it. I thought I got it from you, and I was about to say the same thing to you. I was like, Anthony, this motherfucker has given me monkeypox. I know it. I just know it because I mean I've not been with anybody else, so it could not have been. I don't know. I guess I hear maybe it's airborne, but I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case. I heard.
Now I just need to tell all my loved ones that they got to get the shot now, and they got to wear a mask. I
Well,
mean,
I'm just gonna say if you are going around giving people monkeypox, you need to be responsible in quarantine for like 21 days. Okay, and call me because I could have been out there bumping uglies with my other boyfriends and give it to them. I don't know. I don't know. It puts me in a very awkward position. So
I don't think people realize how far this bromance goes.
I just don't appreciate that, and I'm really upset about that. I just wish you.
We'll get through it together. We'll
I know
find a
you got.
solution. We'll lean on the government. We'll lean on Tony Fauci to
Yeah.
find a cure for this.
Listen, I know
All
you
will
got
be
a
well.
schedule, but this is getting ridiculous. It really is. It really,
What's
really is.
that?
I said, I know you have a busy work schedule, but this is getting ridiculous. And
Yeah.
yeah, all I wanted was a lousy letter or a call. I hope you know I ripped all your pictures off the wall.
I got the chorus running through my mind.
you're,
Seeing a car going off the bridge.
yeah, you're ruined it now.
Uh huh. No, dude, I ever since I got this new position at work, I was on nights, as most know, and then I am on currently on day shift training, and I was working 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. as of last week, and now and then I was working, let's see, 7 to 7. Now I'm 7 to 5, and then I'm on days for the next month, and then I'll go back to working nights.
Well, as fascinating as all this is, I really don't think
I
anyone
know.
on the internet gives a shit.
Nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. I don't even care. Hell, I can't even keep up with my own
I
schedule.
don't even think you give a shit. So yeah.
Mm.
That being said, listen. If you guys are watching and you would like to share this out for us, that would be greatly appreciated. Help bring some more folks into the live stream, and let's see what kind of trouble we can get into today. Because I'm telling you, nobody else is going to say what I'm about to say. I promise you that. Before we do get started, I do want to point out that I was riding to work today, and I didn't even know that this happened, and it was great. It was fantastic. I had no idea. My partner was going, "Hey, did you what do you think about that school shooting?" I'm like, "What school shooting?" I didn't even hear about it. I didn't know. I hadn't been on Facebook. I'm doing my thing. I'm taking care of my family. I'm not on. I don't watch news. I don't. sit there on my social media feeds, just scanning through and trying to find the next chaotic situation or the next, thing I should be heavily opinionated about.
Right.
And it made me start thinking, like, man, this is crazy. I don't before I say what I'm going to say. I came home and I started noticing it, and I'm kind of scrolling through Twitter, waiting on Anthony to get off work so we could do the show. And I'm scrolling through Twitter, and I'm seeing, my friend Harry Douglas, for example, on Twitter. Great guy. Predictable as a box of rocks, but because I sit there watching his tweets go by, and I'm just sitting there thinking, man, I'm pretty sure you could have copied and pasted these tweets from the last school shooting, and it would have said exactly the same thing. And I got this. I don't know about you, Anthony, but do you kind of get that sense that every time one of these things pops off in the media, people are just kind of going back to the last time this thing happened and just copying and pasting their entire stances on these things?
Yeah, it's a recycled, stance on where everybody has their position on gun control. Especially anytime we have a mass, shooting, whether it's in a school or synagogue or, subway or even a grocery store.
Mhm.
And it's there's so much to unpack with this, meaning that there's a lot of things that probably just failed. And we already have enough things in place right now as far as gun control, as far as background checks and this, that, and the other. And it's just like, where at some point did people lose sight of what had happened? And what I mean by that is a lot of these individuals that are responsible for these mass shootings seem to have this copycat feel to them, meaning that they're usually posting on social media, they're sharing pictures, they're tagging people. And this was the case with this individual down in Texas. He had actually posted a photo of his guns and tagged some random chick that hardly even knew him, and talked about things that that were coming. And why is it we get all these signs that could have prevented something, but then nobody does anything about it, but then yet the government and the administration want to push more gun control? That's something that has just never made any sense to me. We need to go back and fix what's already in place. And I think that once we do that, things will actually change. But throwing more you know policies and gun control things are just not going to fix this problem. And of course, everybody wants to go back to, okay, well, we need to take guns away. Well, what about your law abiding citizens that, actually do carry a gun, such as myself and others that just want to protect their families? Why should they have to be the ones that can't do this because of some idiot that decided to go off and do something as, kill a bunch of kids? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I even saw a post on the other 98% Facebook feed that it's got a picture of God up there in the clouds, talking about they really love their fetuses, and then somebody standing behind them, they're like, apparently they're kids too, and the kids are like coming into heaven. It's I don't know if I did a great job explaining that, but basically it's trying to compare the abortion debate with the school shooting debate. But as nice as all that's said,
How can you possibly do that? I mean, the left is one that's willing to kill off an unborn child, but yet they throw their hands up in the air like, what the hell's going on? A bunch of kids just died. Well, what does it matter to you? You wanted to kill an unborn child anyway. So, I don't think you really have a position on this argument, if you ask me.
yeah, and that's just it. Like I said, you go on Facebook, you go on Twitter, and you can pretty much guess exactly what your friends are going to say, what your aunt
Yeah.
is going to say, what your granny Edith of theirs going to say. You know exactly what they're going to say, and you don't even have to have any details. Hell, I heard that there was a school shooting, and automatically I've got my stance. I'm like why? So here's the thing. Here's the thing that I can guarantee you, and isn't anybody else on the internet talking about this today. And this is where I think you guys actually do come for the show, because you actually get some alternate perspectives that maybe you hadn't considered. And when this gentleman brought this up to me, he said, hey, there's a school shooting. What'd you think about the school shooting? I'm like, what school shooting? I didn't know anything about it. And it was great. And I'm sitting there thinking, just like we talk about all the time, you look outside, the birds are chirping, like there's nothing going on in my local area. Nothing at all going on in my local area. And I said to him, I said, at the risk of sounding like an asshole, I really don't give a shit about a handful of kids thousands of miles away from me who I'm never going to meet, I'm never going to interact with. I mean, yeah, does that situation suck for that local community over there? Yes, absolutely. And nothing I'm about to say has anything to do with trying to diminish what happened to those families. Yes, I'm sure if that happened in my area, it would be devastating. If that happened to my children, I'd be devastated. But that's just it. If it happens to my children, that's when it's my problem to worry about, right? I
Yeah,
get
I mean, but I guess my argument to that is, I mean, it does bring some sort of self-awareness to, a situation like this potentially. I mean, you hear the argument all the time. This could potentially happen in our hometown. I mean, to kind of give you an idea, is I did, disaster relief for 20 years. And that 20 years, I've never had to do anything in my hometown of Mount Juliet until 2 years ago.
yeah,
So to say that it could never happen, you can't rule that out, because that there is that slim possibility that something can happen, but you just need to be self-aware. So when I
right,
hear of situations like this, it's in the back of my mind. I
right.
feel bad for the families for
Give
losing
more,
their children, but you're right. It doesn't affect me in a sense of I'm not directly affected. I do also have a 15-year-old daughter that I do think about when stuff like this happens. But what I hope is learned from this is that, the school administrators are taking the precautions that they need to ensure that our children are safe. You can't let your guard down, unfortunately, because of the times that we live in.
absolutely.
Taking
Sorry to give more context to what I was saying.
Yeah, I
There.
didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just
Oh yeah, yeah, you're good. It's just I'm sitting here thinking about it. I'm just like there is so I think I said something like this because it was a really interesting conversation. If we took 10% of the mental energy we're putting toward these kids in Texas, and we put that mental energy toward helping somebody in our local community, I think the world would be a better place. For example, let's say you got a guy down the road that's strung out on drugs and needs some help trying to get off that stuff. You go spend some time with him, hopes and prayers for that guy, local community effort, try to figure it out, solve the problem. Why is he feeling so isolated? Why is he feeling like he has to go down this route? Put some mental energy into helping the kids in your community, helping make sure that, you know, the kids in your own community don't go undetected. Like how many people in that other community were so focused on what's going on in Ukraine, for example, that it completely went undetected that this kid was off. Like something, like when something's off. Like when there's a kid that has got these kinds of thoughts when things are going a little awry, or something's just not quite right. He seems like he's got little murderous suicidal tendencies. These things don't go unnoticed when you're paying attention, when you're looking at what's directly in front of your face. But unfortunately, what's in front of our faces right now is our smartphones right now and TVs right now that are giving us a bunch of, like, spoon feeding us information from the people from thousands of miles away, from across the globe, that has no impact on our life whatsoever. Unfortunately, because of the way that society's set up with the federal government system and that unfortunately, it does have some impact on our life, some of these events. So we kind of have to pay attention, which really sucks, because we are so busy focused on these huge topics that keep getting brought up. And notice that every time that gets brought up, there's a narrative. It fits the narrative perfectly, lock and key type fit. You've got that shooting from last week where the white kid comes in, shoots a bunch of black people. Nobody mentioned the shooting the day before where it was a black guy shooting 17 other people and injuring a lot of people. That's not mentioned. So the media has an incentive to have us focus on exactly these huge, high-profile events. They don't have any impact on our lives. We're never going to meet these people. If it was just us, if only the only news we could receive was news from within our radius, out maybe 100 miles from where we live, we would never ever know about half the shit. Most of our anxiety levels wouldn't be through the fucking roof all the time because we're constantly worried that whatever happened in Texas is going to happen in our area. But everybody's so busy staring at their goddamn phones that they don't even notice the kid that's acting strange, or the kid that's potentially going to do something like this. Does that help lend a little more clarity to where I'm coming from on
No,
this?
it does. I mean, their attention is diverted elsewhere when it should be focused in their own hometown. I understand that. And kind of addressing the point that I made earlier about the tornadoes that ripped through Mount Juliet, people from all over the place probably looked at the news and thought, man, that sucks for them. Man, I hate that they lost loved ones during that, tragic event. And I personally had some friends of mine that lost their home. But
Yeah.
I'm not mad that people out in California or Washington or over on the West Coast didn't do anything directly to help anybody that I knew that was involved. Because I understand that this was a local event that took place. And there's not much they can do from a distance other than just give their well wishes and thoughts and prayers, as much as the Democrats hate when Republicans do that or say that quote. But yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I mean, but I think what people ought to do is, okay, if you hear about the story, if you hear about the mass shooting, you know put that in the back of your mind. Maybe kind of see what's going on at your school and your local community to find out what preventive measures are they taking to ensure that nothing like this happens. um I think that should be done, just out of the careness and well-being of not only my child but others as well. you know um so it just depends on the people. It just depends on the person, I guess. And you're right. People are so hyper focused on what's going on in different parts of the world or even different parts of the country, but they can't seem to zero that in on their own community. It's
Right.
one of the reasons why I like Chase Matheson, because he really does pay attention to what goes on here locally.
That's funny.
But he also,
I got
but
a
he
note.
also, huh?
That's funny. I got a note right here that I was going to bring that up as well.
Yeah, I mean, he goes abroad, but he does more stuff here locally. And that's what, people need to understand is that, yes, it sucks. It's a shitty situation what happened down in Texas. Could have been prevented. There's really no way of knowing. Are there policies and things put into place to catch these sort of things? I mean, I can't tell you how many times there's been a mass shooting or a shooting where the individual who done it was either released by the government or by the police back into the public. And then all of a sudden, everybody is like shocked and completely just devastated that somebody did this when, your local law enforcement let them go just 2 weeks prior. It's like you guys have got the people that are causing these issues and
Yeah.
you're letting them back into the population. Like, and so to me, it's like, whoa, wait a second. Don't act so surprised that this individual did this. That's what kills me is everybody is so hyper focused on the actual shooting. Well, let's take it back 10 steps and find out how the hell did we get here? What did we miss?
Yep.
That's what's important. That's how you fix the system. Just adding more and more regulations is not going to do anything to the situation itself. It's not going to bring those kids back. Therefore, let's focus on the things and the loopholes or the situations that are broken within the system. Let's fix that first. And then that way we can try our best to ensure that the communities moving forward don't end up in a situation like this.
So speaking of Chase Matheson,
Yeah.
just from him and another gentleman, he goes by Sam Adams with a Z. They have been spending a lot of time focusing on local politics in Rutherford County, for example.
Right.
They've sat in every school board meeting that's been happening recently in the last year or so. And within that last year, I think they've managed to get rid of, I think, 4 or 5 of the previous board members because they've uncovered some corrupt shit that's going on right here in our
Yeah.
backyard. And as long as everybody's focused on, what's Biden doing? What's Hunter Biden doing? Like, yeah,
You
we can bitch about that all day long, but it's not going to solve anything. You know what solving things is people focusing on, adjusting their focus on local things, local issues they
Yeah.
can't solve. Like, how I hate to say this, but it was kind of a relief for me when he said that to me, when he said, "Hey, what do you think about that mass shooting?" And the fact that I had no idea that it even happened, I was relieved. Okay, I know what that sounds like. I know that sounds like, Daniel, you're such an asshole. You don't care about the kids. You don't care about like what's going on with these school shooters. Like, that's not it. It's just that I've been so focused on my local area, my community, You know, I've been focused on my family. I've been focused on handling my own business, making my own bed, so to speak. That
Mhm.
the rest of the world can go fuck right off, as far as I'm concerned. I mean,
Right.
I can only do so much about so many things. We were not evolved to deal with the issues of 7 billion people. We were evolved to deal with the issues of like our 150 person local community. Like it's only been in the last like 50 so years or you know whatever when we've started to get these massive gains in how fast we communicate around the world that we actually start thinking that the whole world is our world, and it's not. It's just not. It's too big.
You
Too
know, and it's interesting is because, there's a lot of similarities and correlations when it came to what I did with community service and disaster relief. Yes, as much as I would love to help every human and soul, that lives in the United States and abroad, I physically cannot do that without the help of others, obviously. But I've always done things here locally. And, if I'm able and I have the resources to help abroad, then yes, that I do it, but the thing that people have to remember is that if you really want to make an impact or legitimate difference, you got to stop depending on our government, Joe Biden, his administration, and other people like that. You really got to hone it in back home, and that's one of the reasons why I do admire what Chase Matheson has been doing locally, is because we need more people like him. And I think that you would really have a good sense of community, but it also a well protected community, in the same sense if people started to really focus on that. Um, what is it going to take for people to get there? I'm not sure, because like you said, we are so hyper focused on our screens and everything else that's going on in the world. You're walking by a homeless person, you don't even know it because you're so concerned about what's on your phone and what's going on over in Ukraine. I mean, it's this is a constant issue and battle that we have argued and we have been trying to preach to people for some time now.
Yeah, I guess ultimately what I'm trying to insist or ask or I don't know. I don't know if convince is the word. I don't even know what the word is I'm looking for. But you know, the message I'm trying to get through is why do we care? Why should we care?
Because I think as humans we're sympathetic to the loss of a life, especially in a mass number like that so quickly,
Right. Yeah.
and especially with young lives. I mean, I would hate to say this, and I know the kind of person you are, but to me, my first thought was 18 kids. Holy shit, that's horrible.
Yeah.
That is a tragedy.
Okay.
And
Hear me out. As soon as you said that, I had no idea what the count was. I had no idea.
right.
I don't know. I don't know
I
who.
think it's 18. I know a fourth grade teacher, or I think she was a fourth grade teacher. Um, I could be wrong on the numbers. I haven't. I mean, I have literally been so busy. I couldn't tell you what the final count is, but it was way up there. Sandy Hook was the only other school shooting that I can remember that was 20 kids that I believe that had died.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that it's okay to have feelings or sympathetic feelings towards the situation. I would like to think that that we are human to an extent that we do feel something when it comes to the death of a child.
Absolutely.
Um, but to dwell on it, to harp on it, I don't think that's healthy. I think that if you're on social media and that's all you're reading, you need to probably get off your phone and find something else to do. Um,
Okay.
but again, go ahead.
Got it. So yes, so what you're saying right there makes a lot of sense. I think the reason we're all tuned into this is what we do care. We give a shit
Yeah.
about these folks. Okay, so uh, okay, so hold on. Aunt Kiki says we should be focusing on our local 22 shot, 19 dead last I saw earlier today. Okay, so it sounds like she's kind of agreeing with what we're saying. So yeah, basically
Okay.
here's what I'm thinking is yes, people do care about the situation, and they're good. That means that's a good thing. We all have hearts. We all care. We want to solve the problem. So of course we get on there on the internet and we're like, here's my solution to the problem. We should. Now, if we took one of those we shoulds and we just focus that on our local politics, our local community, our local students and children, our local families, neighbors, if we just took one of those and we focused it on the people around us, how much more impactful could that be? How much more change could we start to see? How much
I
less
think
focused would people be on the things that are going on thousands of miles away from themselves if they don't even have time because they're actually focused on things within their locus of control, right?
And I honestly believe that you would see a dramatic change and shift, um, in not only, homelessness, but, um, drug use within the community and poverty. These are things that have plagued our society for many, many years. And I think that's what it is, that our focus is so misdirected, and it needs to be redirected back to our own communities. And I think that's, and let me tell you something. It's when I was doing disaster relief and I was doing things in my hometown, you feel good that you're able to help and make a difference. That impact is direct. There's not much I can do for the families down in Texas right now. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't, you know what I'm saying? Even if it happened here locally, I wouldn't know what to do, but I guarantee you, I would have enough in me to, to attend a school board meeting and find out, okay, what went wrong here? Who dropped the ball? Why wasn't the doors locked? I mean, that's what I'm saying. We need to take what happened in Texas, and the schools all across the country need to reevaluate, their situation. I mean, they need to make sure that they're doing what they need to do to make sure that those, children and the staff are protected from potential situations like this. Throwing more, like I said, more gun control and policies out there, it's not going to fix this. It's not going to go away. And I guarantee you, the person or persons that commit these school shootings or mass shootings of any kind don't give a shit about background checks. They don't give a shit about the policies that are put in place. Their intent, one way or another, whether it's a gun, whether it's a bat, whether it's an automobile. I mean, look at what happened with that guy up there, up north during the Christmas parade. He used a vehicle as a battering ram to mow down people.
Right.
So what I want people to understand is that, criminals are going to find whatever they can and by any means necessary to harm others, and it just, I don't know, man. Like I said, we can go on and on and on for
Yeah.
hours about this, and I'm sure
So it is.
probably others have heard the same, situations or
Right, right.
alternatives.
So what it sounds like you're saying is instead of getting online and trying to convince the entire world how we should handle the situation in Texas, maybe what we should be doing is changing our mindset slightly and looking at the situation in Texas if we're going to look at it and figure out, okay, what went wrong and how can I apply that locally? How can I apply that at my
Yeah,
local level? How can I go to my own school board and say, hey, I noticed this happened in Texas. This is where the fail safe went wrong, or this is where the mistakes happened. What can we do to address that? And maybe that would make
yeah.
a little more. Is that kind of
No, it is. It's
right?
you got to self evaluate. You got to take what you've learned, unfortunately, at the cost of human lives and of course children, and you need to go back to your own community and you need to take a little bit of that with you, and start asking questions. If you can't do anything to help those individuals, which sadly we can't, we need to try to do something here at home. And that's where you ask the questions. That's where you say, hey, I want to know, what is your guidelines? What are your policies? How do kids get in and out of the school? And you might be shocked and surprised about how many, maybe family members or even parents may not know the protocol of each school and how they lock things down and, the drills that they run and so forth. I mean, you've got to educate yourself on what goes on within your own community and with your own schools that your children attend. That's important to me,
Yeah. You know what's interesting?
What's that?
Of the last two major shootings that the media decided to cover, I have not looked into either one, but I have received some information through and around my friends and through conversations and through social media feeds. Right.
Yeah.
What I found interesting is that in the other one last week, I think it was last week, I knew everybody knew that the person who did it was white and his victims were black, and that he had some kind of manifesto like that. Those major details stood out to me, and those are the ones that everybody knew and everybody was saying, everybody was repeating. And it was like, okay, that's interesting. That's exactly what that fits the narrative. That fits exactly the type of narrative that the media would want to shove down our throats, right? This shooting, I have zero idea what the race of the perpetrator was, but I do know it was children that were shot, and he used an AR-15. He had bought this high dollar gun. He killed all these people. Like I know the important details that matter for the cookie cutter narrative that we're used to seeing. I just thought that was kind of interesting that even through my not paying attention, those details still came through. Like those ones were so heavily highlighted that those ones came through.
You know what I found interesting is I cannot remember the name of the town that was affected where that individual drove his SUV through the Christmas parade. I can't remember which state. Oh my God, I can't remember. I'm tired. Um,
So many of
but
them.
we know that that was a racial situation. He was looking to mow down a bunch of white people. Unfortunately, he ended up killing some. But again, it goes back to what I was talking about is that this individual had a rap sheet longer than toilet paper that I used to wipe my ass. When you have a known criminal that has got that is a repeated offender and then is constantly let back out into the general public, I'm not surprised anymore. I'm not surprised. I mean, look at the states such as California and New York that are constantly letting criminals go because they can't seem to keep the population under control, within the prison systems. And when you let these people back out, why are people so surprised by this? I'm not. I mean, it's just I don't quite understand that logic of thinking. It's like, well, you guys let the person back out into society. I mean, you gambled at the cost of human lives because you decided not to keep them in jail for whatever the reason might be. I don't know. I just think that yes, it is a very sad situation with the amount of kids that were affected, the families, and I hate that. I really do. But I think now moving forward, get away from the motives and the race. I mean, because at the end of the day, if you look at how the schools are operating and how they're trying to keep our kids and staff protected, whether it's a racial situation or not, it was prevented. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know how you get people to move forward. I really don't. And
Well, I
start
do.
thinking in a way that it's indirectly about their community.
Right. I have some ideas, but nobody's going to do it. There's no politician going to run on it, and it's never going to actually be solved because you just can't. You can't win an election on, hey, we should abolish the welfare state, or hey, we should separate state and education. Like it's time for the separation of state and education. It's time for the separation of state and economy. Like these are things that need to be separated, but you can't run on that. Nobody's going to win an election on that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
here's what I've been thinking the whole time. I'm sitting here thinking, I feel like okay, I feel like our level of caring should be directly proportional to the amount of miles away the event took place. So basically, the closer it is, the more you should care. The farther away it is, you should probably care less. Like
so
as a general like guideline, not a hard and fast rule by any means, but as a general guideline, boy, how much simpler would your life be? Like
it's known as a ripple effect.
how much less stressful would your life be? How many people would have to take half or a quarter of the anxiety pills they're currently on because they don't have in the back of their mind, and they don't feel this need to care about people like thousands and thousands of miles away, regardless of how terrible it is. Yeah, it's fucking terrible. I mean, yeah, if that shit happened in my backyard, I'd be caring about that shit. I really would, and it would suck.
So let me ask you this though.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you. So say it did happen in your hometown. Now, obviously, your kids they weren't killed, they weren't shot, but they did lose friends that they were close to.
Mhm.
What in your mindset would change?
In my mindset would change. I
Yeah,
would
like what would you do? How would you approach this than say if it happened down in Texas, hundreds of miles away?
like first thing I would do is get on Twitter and wonder why people in like China aren't pissed off about this whole situation, tweeting about it. I would be really. No, I'm just joking. Anyway, no. As far as how my mindset would change, I think the first question that might come to my mind in this situation is, hey, how did we miss this? Whose kid was this? What's his community, or like what's his family situation look like? What is it? How did we all as a community miss this? Why aren't we tight knit enough as a community that this completely escaped our notice? Like that would be some.
Do you honestly think that your level of intellect is going to be thinking that the
No,
day that
that's just me. That's just me. I don't know. I would just be wondering how the hell did we miss this? Like what?
so you can understand the outrage by so many people that first learn of something like this, even though they're removed 100 miles away. You see what I'm saying?
I'm hundreds of miles away or thousands of miles away. I mean, I guess the mindset I used to have might be something like, okay, so what? Again, similar questions, but how dumb were they? They didn't see it right in front of their faces. Like, because it's easy for us on the outside to look into somebody else's situation and be like, oh, duh, it was right there the whole time. But then again, like I said earlier, if people are too busy on their phones focusing on other situations that aren't in their community, they're not focused on their local community. It's really hard to see them. It's really hard to see it through the screen of your phone. Like it really is, because it's not exciting to go on Twitter and see what's going on in local Woodbury down here. You know, it's just there's nothing really going on. So people don't get like a dopamine hit by going on to local, Twitter in Murfreesboro. Like they just don't. Although I'm
So
starting.
what would your advice be moving forward for others that are watching, or, that would even kind of wonder what to do in a situation like this? What would you tell them?
As far as the people involved in the situation, or as far as
No, no,
people
no. Just,
like us
just in
watching.
general, taking the Texas situation, and moving forward, what would you tell them? Would you want them to propose more, gun policies and, um, stricter and tougher guidelines as far as being able to possess, to own a firearm, or,
No, no.
do you think?
I think honestly, the biggest elephant in the room that nobody seems to be addressing is the fact that we still are doing the public school thing. Like, come on, guys, how stupid do you have to be to think the public school is the answer here? Like, that's first of all. I mean, I don't know. Anything that the government touches, they don't just fail at it; they do the opposite of fail.
Well, I mean, things that could actually be done within a reasonable amount of time. I mean, public school, to be able to get rid of that, I mean, that's going to take
Well, that's
years.
just it. Like you were saying, we got to look 10 steps back and figure out how we even got here.
Right.
And if we don't look 10 steps back and figure out how we started and how we got here, we can't go back and address step one and start steering the ship in a slightly different direction. We can't, we'll never solve the problem as long as, like, at the end of the whole abortion debate, we're all like, hey, do we kill a baby or not kill a baby? But nobody's going, hey, how do we get in this situation in the first place? How do we get to where this is our problem we're trying to solve? Like, we missed all the steps on the way. Same thing with this. Oh my God, there's a kid shooting kids in school. Like, ban guns. No, how did we get to that point? Like, why is this the discussion we're having? What happened 10 steps away? Well, probably we didn't raise our kids right. First of all, we're putting them all in these little zoos called public schools and trying to let them socialize each other, which is stupid as hell. Like, there's just so much different about nowadays that's not the same as it was back then. And I mean, I've seen good arguments back in the day. People had guns in the back of their pickup trucks going to school. It wasn't a big deal, and school shootings were way less. Now, this isn't an argument to arm all the kids and arm all the teachers, but that being said, you do remember me mentioning that before. I think we did on the last episode about how
Yeah.
To tell children they can't possess firearms is a violation of their Second Amendment rights. So, I mean, do we go with the Second Amendment on this one? I don't know what the answer is. I do kind of know what the answer is, but nobody's going to do it. Nobody can do it.
Well, do you think that they should arm? Okay, well, that's a bit of a tricky situation because kids can overtake a teacher and then, take their firearm. But do
Yep.
you think that teachers in some capacity should be able to possess or keep a loaded firearm within the classroom or in the school
I'm
premises somewhere?
I'm totally fine with a teacher carrying a weapon.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. I don't have any problem with a kid carrying a weapon. I don't.
Do you think that would deter a lot of people from doing these sort of acts? Like
Oh,
if they find out that the teachers at that school do carry a firearm?
Absolutely. I mean, what is it? 94% or something of these mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. Like,
Yeah.
seems pretty obvious to me. But um, the question isn't whether students and teachers should be carrying firearms. The question is, should we be sending students to public schools, putting them in a situation where they're in this constant chaotic bullying environment where they're, just not, it's not a natural environment for a lot of people. It was not a natural environment for me. I did well in it because I'm pretty flexible and adjustable, but it's not. I have a big problem with authority, as you know. I don't do well with sitting on my ass and listening to somebody drone on. I need hands-on. Like this one size fits all solution is not a solution at all. It's just not.
So then what would you propose then?
It'd have to be private schools, home schools, take it back to old school. I mean, taking the government out of our education is going to be a huge step in setting these wrongs right, I think. But
okay, so if a lot of most families are a two-income family because of obviously inflation and many other things. Do you think that it's possible for a two-income family, husband and wife, for someone to do away with their full-time job and stay home and
prong number
homeschool?
two. That's prong number two, separation of economy and state. The only reason we're having such issues with our monetary system right now is because the government's involved in it directly. The Federal Reserve is saying they're printing money like it's going out of style. Like, I feel like in the next toilet paper shortage, we should just go to the Fed and stock up on money, because it's probably going to be a much more accessible piece of item to wipe our asses with. So the need, the only reason there's even a need for people to have two incomes or multiple incomes to even support their family nowadays is because of the policies of the government. You separate economy and state, you solve that problem. You separate school education and state, you solve that problem. Like ultimately, it's just, you got to get the state out of everything. You have to get out, like start doing shit on your own people. Like there's good solutions. There's actual a lot of really cool ideas I've heard about lately. About how to educate students in the modern world. When you're coming in a position where you have so many different potential career paths that not a damn one of them looks the same anymore. It used to be what? You go to school, you graduate, you go to college, you get your pension and your full-time job, and you work there for 40, 50 years and you retire. That was pretty much it. That was like the path. I don't know anybody who has the same path nowadays. Like, it's ridiculously complicated and individualized, and education needs to be the same way. But there's just so much that needs to be separated out. Like you got to get winter welfare. You got to separate economy and state. You got to separate education and state. Like, these are huge things that can't be done, but won't be done. And so I hate that. I know as I'm saying these, the idea that we'll actually implement them, not going to happen. Too many people are like, oh, but we got to have, don't you care about educating the kids? Don't you care about, poor people? Don't you care about, like, yes. And the government is doing the exact opposite of its intended goal. I don't know. It's huge. It's huge, big moves. But
yeah, I mean, that's something that's obviously going to take years. I'm talking about more short-term solutions to problems such as mass shootings on any caliber or situation. So, it could be schools or in somewhere on the public. I mean, you can't rid all of the evil, but you can do your best to protect yourself from it.
Right.
That's why a lot of conservatives carry a firearm.
Right. So that's where the best thing I think people can do is just readjust their focus, get a different pair of glasses if you have to, but readjust your focus on your local community. Yeah. I think it's fitting that for this episode, I decided not to wear my glasses. Ironically, normally I wear my glasses, but for this episode, I took them off. I think that was, maybe there was something to that, but I promise it wasn't planned. But yeah, readjust your focus on your local community, focus on things that you actually can control. Focus on like I can't believe how many people are out here on Twitter telling everybody how we should run our lives, but you look at their personal lives and they're a fucking shit show. It's a shit show looking at their lives.
What I find interesting about social media and people, the huge disconnect between the two is the fact that you're willing to put your opinion and your thoughts on social media, but when it comes down to it, you won't do anything outside of that. Your safe haven is your social media. You want to talk about what should be done to correct the matter, but yet you want to actually physically get out into your own community to change, to actually make a legitimate change. Because people feel like, oh, if I just post something on Twitter, that's going to change everything. Well, no, it's not. You just look like a pompous ass, because your opinion doesn't mean a hill of beans to people that are actually out in the community that are making that effort to change things.
Right.
So I think first that needs to happen is get the fuck off of social media and talk about your opinions and your thoughts about changing the community and what needs to be done, and physically go do it.
Yeah, yeah.
I've always had an issue with that.
Yeah, what's interesting is like I'm starting to finally get a few people. This has been a long game, I'm telling you. When it comes to like how I raise my kids,
Right.
like I have the big topic of peaceful parenting to preach to the world. And I'm just now recently starting to get people asking me, like, your kids are so well behaved. They got such good grade. Hell, my daughter just graduated third in her class. Like, that's a pretty big deal. And
Yeah.
they're doing well for the most part. Yeah, we all make mistakes and they're still, learning, but for the most part, I got really good kids and they're really well mannered and they're learning their lessons and they're not stupid by any stretch of the imagination. We have a great relationship, and it's like this is what I'm talking about. I'm taking the ideas that I preach and I'm applying them locally. So the best way I can promote peaceful parenting is by being a peaceful parent. So if you want to promote, whatever idea it is that you want to promote online, whatever solution you think you have that might have prevented this atrocity from happening in Texas, go local with it. Apply it
Yeah.
locally. Figure out a way that you can apply those principles locally, test them out in a smaller environment. People do have more control than they think. I'm actually floored at the fact that Chase Matheson, Chase Williams, Sam Adams, these folks locally here in Murfreesboro have managed to get rid of over half of the school board in their local area in Rutherford County
Yeah.
because they started taking their principles, applying them locally. And it's
And
fantastic.
that's one of the things that I've always loved about doing this show is the people we have met, and ourselves included, have always been very active within our communities. We just don't get on this live feed or this podcast and talk about the changes that need to happen. We have physically have gone out into our communities and made a legitimate difference. That is the difference between us and most other podcasters, is that if you want to actually take some credibility, that's what we do, is we do things more locally than we do abroad. But unfortunately, a lot of people that are on social media, they feel like they did their due diligence by posting what they have, and then they turn off their phone like it's going to change the world. No, it doesn't work that way in any capacity. It does not work that way. That needs to stop. And like you said, it's if you're going to post about it, be about it. Unfortunately, it's just easier to sit on the toilet, take a shit, and post your thoughts about a situation that you're not happy about. And that's just kind of the reality of life right now that we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, for those of you who didn't get to see the beginning of this episode, basically the message that I think we're trying to get across is, you need to act locally. You really should
Yeah.
act locally. And in terms of like the level of care you should have about some kids that got shot in Texas, again, your level of caring should probably be in direct proportion to the amount of miles away they are.
Well, I don't agree to that, but yeah, I mean, everybody's
I mean,
different. So
again, it's just a general framework to kind of help reorient your mind toward
yeah,
local solutions. It's not a set in stone like, hey, if they're 1,000 miles away, you should not care at all. Nothing like that. Yeah, everybody's gonna care. We're good people. Most of us are good people. We want to care. We want to help. We see these things and go, oh my God, this is terrible, and our hearts go out to them. Our prayers go out. Yeah, that's great. That means we're good people. Now let's take 10% of that effort and that energy, those prayers. Let's focus them locally. Let's focus them on people who you can impact, policies that you can make a change on. So that way you're not the one that's the national news story. You don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be
apply the
that.
just apply the rules that you've learned somewhere else and implement it in your own hometown. And you can't defend off everybody all over the place, but what you can do is make sure that your hometown, your community, is well preserved, and that's in their way of life. and that also brings a lot of people together. It's
Yeah.
a happy community. It's a healthy community for the most part. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's amazing. After we helped with the tornadoes in Mount Juliet, like the amount of friendships that we made, the amount of connections we
yeah.
made in our local community that are still good friends to even today. That's great. That's exactly what it's about. That's what it should be.
It's a great commodity to have that we don't see much of anymore because people are too busy on social media, just kind of throwing their verbiage out there that doesn't really affect the community at all. What we do is, like I told you before, it's just we're one of probably very few podcasters that do focal, that does that does focus on local issues.
Focal locus.
Yeah.
Focal locus.
Uh-huh. That's 10 hours of work and about ready for bed, and I haven't had dinner yet. So
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm still trying to come to terms with this feeling I had earlier, and I mentioned it earlier in the show, that when I was told about the shooting that happened in Texas, I was relieved that I didn't know anything about it. I don't know what to do with that feeling, but I just want it to be known that I did notice it. I'm self-aware enough to notice that feeling of relief that I didn't know, and I don't know what to do with that feeling. But I think there's something to be said. Like I think that's what inspired the idea that I think the level of care we have again should be based on okay, our level of wow, that was not a sound bite that is going to work anywhere. Again, I feel like that level of caring should be higher the closer to home these issues are. And it was far enough away that I'm like, I don't know who these people are. I've never met them. I don't know anything about them. I don't care. I just don't. I mean, my heart goes out to them, but in general, I just don't care about what's going on in Texas. I don't. I have my own shit to worry about. I cannot possibly worry about the issues of 7+ billion people. I can't, and it wears me out to try. So
just worry about the seven in your own home, man.
I do well to worry about the issues of the 7 in my own house. So let me focus on that. Don't lambaste me for not caring about some kids far, far away. I don't have time to care. I don't have the mental energy to care. So, I'm coming more, I guess, so I'm still trying to process this emotion I'm feeling. I'm still, I think I'm coming to terms with and becoming okay with telling myself it's okay to not have to have an opinion about those issues so far away. I guess that's a good way of putting it. I'm not really sure.
I
Again,
think you can have. I think honestly, you can have a moment to think about what happened, and then you just seem like you just moved on. You had your moment. You feel bad. You hate that it happened, and then I could see someone like you 5 minutes later, you're off measuring a door frame. I just don't.
I don't have.
But I would understand it because, huh?
I just don't have the mental capacity to keep over and over and over again sitting on Twitter for hours arguing with people about what went wrong and why we should do this and how we should solve the problem. I just don't have that
There's
time.
no solutions in an argument over social media. None.
None.
That's why I haven't even posted anything on my socials. It's because we can get into a heated debate or an argument about what needs to be done next, but at the end of the day, what we just discussed isn't going to change anything. What's going to change something is taking what we've learned, implement them in our own communities, and make a legitimate impact and difference. That is the only solution.
That's
Only
the
solution.
yeah.
Stop depending on the government. Stop depending on the each and every administration, whether you're Democrat or Republican. Get your ass off the couch. Start asking questions. Get involved with your schools if you have kids that are part of your schools, and just say, "Hey, what's going on?" And again, that's, I would have better peace of mind and sleep better at night knowing that I knew the ins and outs of how schools are operating when it comes to an active shooter. I mean, that would make me feel better.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, it's just the thing I learned about social media, man, is you're not going to get anywhere with anybody except for either you're not going to like each other at the end of the conversation, or
Honestly,
you're feeding your echo chamber and you're getting all the same sound bites from all your
right.
friends that you get every time one of these situations
Oh,
happens.
I
So
love giving my echo chamber a little like just throwing a wrench in the echo chamber and just hearing it rattle around. I love it. I love it. But I just completely lost my train of thought is what happened, and now I'm just
nah,
trying
you're
to
good.
until it comes back. No, if we could just if our show, if these ideas, and I guarantee you ain't nobody else saying these ideas. I have yet to find anybody. You know, on the podcast you listen to, you know what they're going to say. You know what your friends on social media are going to say. I guarantee you will not find another podcast saying what we're saying today about this subject. I hope, with that being said, that at least one person who watches this show goes and attends their next school board meeting,
Yeah.
or goes and does something, anything local, goes and volunteers. I just found out I've got a friend that volunteers with the Lions Club. I just got some information about how to go help with a fish fry and a horse show. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to meet my local, people here. It's just something that I can put my money where my mouth is. I can put my advice out there and do what I practice, what I preach, so to speak. So that's, I mean, if one person does that, if one person takes the initiative to do something local because of this, then I feel like this show has been a success,
And if people feel like, they have a compelling urge to want to help during disasters, look me up, send me a message and I can guide you through the proper steps that you need to do to be able to become certified with the American Red Cross, to be able to aid in disaster relief, or if you just want to do it on your own, which typically that's what I do a lot, with the help of friends. And, there's a lot of organization that goes into it. I mean, you saw it firsthand, during what happened to Mount Juliet, but
Right.
if people want to get active that way, hit me up. I've got 20 years of experience of doing this, and I can't tell you how many disasters I've been a part of, unfortunately, but I've learned a lot and I've met a lot of great people along the way. And, a lot of it has been abroad, not so much here at home. Um, but again, it's just, yeah, if you got questions or if that's something that you want to pursue within your own community, I would be more than happy to, set up some, things that you probably never thought about or that you can do, to organize, search and rescue, or, just people to go out with a chainsaw and cut down a bunch of trees, or, clear out, behind 7 homes with a bulldozer.
So
I mean, it's just whatever people need. I don't mind helping them out. So
that's awesome, Anthony. So yeah, definitely hit him up for that. So I want to hit a couple comments here. Sweet Cheeks on YouTube says, I focus on being a great mom to my son, raising him with manners and respect. There's too many lazy parents that just let their kids do whatever they want. Absolutely.
well, and nowadays, parents just stick their kids in front of a screen,
Or in a
you
public
know.
school.
Well, yeah, that too. But I mean, there is none of that social interaction except for getting onto your children for something they've done bad. Parents typically don't praise their children enough anymore because, they're so, honed in on disciplining them. And then when they're acting out, they just give them a tablet or a phone and say, here, go away. Stop bugging me. Parenting has just broke down in so many different areas. And that's a show
Yeah,
for another day.
depending on the government to do it for us through public schools, and wonder why
Yeah.
our kids are shooting kids. Okay, so the auditor from D Live says volunteers are really needed for FEMA certification, I guess. So yeah, if that's something you want to help out with,
Yeah, I worked with FEMA, not directly, but I, helped coordinate a water location back during the 2010 Nashville flood. If anybody remembers that, and basically we set up a location over at Antioch Middle School, and it turned into a water station where basically we were receiving pallets of water from FEMA, to be able to offload into people's cars. So I've got a little bit of work with FEMA, but not, like I said, directly. But yeah, I mean, if you want to help FEMA out, that would be great. They were also, very helpful. Well, I think that was more of a leadership kind of dropping the ball. But back during Katrina, we didn't see FEMA for up to a week. But I was doing search and rescue. I wasn't doing
oh,
anything with
okay.
FEMA at the time.
So it was FEMA CERT, CERT, which stands for Community Emergency Response Team.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Got it. Thank you for the clarification on that. I was not aware of that. So yeah, those are some great ideas, some great ways that you can get involved in your local community.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I think the more people that get involved in their local community, the less likely it is that people like this Texas shooter go unnoticed, right? And we
Right.
can actually take steps to solve these problems ahead of time. So
And I mean, and I hate to say this. Well, I kind of am glad that I say this, but, um, I think we can actually start to see an improvement within um, our own country from the ground up. I mean, it all starts, like I said, at the local level. And once we get back to the roots of where we're from, and and how we're raising our kids, and and so forth, I think that you would see a difference. It doesn't happen overnight. It does take time. So we live in a society where if we don't get instant gratification, people become very impatient. Well, the thing that you have to learn with your local community is that just things do take time. Just keep pushing forward. You will see a change later on.
All right. Well, I tell you what, if any of you watching have got any value out of this episode, please be sure to share it with your friends.
Yeah.
Those people that are just going online and repeating the same old parroted talking points that they do every single time one of these things happen, send them a link to the show. Try to open up their minds to a little different perspective that maybe they hadn't considered, that maybe we can actually start pushing the ball in a positive direction.
Or even ask, those people that are making those posts on social media, hey, so obviously we can't seem to figure this out. So what do you plan on doing locally?
Yeah.
Pose that question to them and see how they respond. You'd be
That's
surprised.
Yeah, so you have been watching the Unframe of Mind show, where we have uncomfortable conversations without a condom. I've been your host, Daniel Wagner,
Anthony Trawick.
and we will see you next time. I'm not sure when that next time will be, and we'll continue putting out these episodes as we see fit and necessary. So if you enjoy them, please stay tuned. If you would do us a huge favor and subscribe to our channel, that'd be greatly appreciated. So yeah, I guess I'm logging off now.
All right, man. Have a good night.
All right, later on, guys.